This is Barbara Mode, and this is my journal entry on the Annova and the Post Hoc test. I have originally taken the high school Algebra 1 scores, the first administration, the raw score only, of male Hispanic students in grades 9 through 12 by the 3 campuses. So you can see I've already sorted and separated. I did want to say, for learning purposes, Campus 1007 only had 17 or actually 16 students that were Hispanic males. I went ahead for educational purposes only. I would never do this in a real study, but for this intention only, so I could get to the post hoc test, I went ahead and repopulated the same scores over and over where I could get a similar student count for all 3 campuses. The next thing I did was I needed to do a descriptive statistic. I went ahead and said my null hypothesis would be that there's no significant difference in Algebra 1 scores of Hispanic males between the 3 campuses, and I probably should put high school campuses. And my alternative hypothesis would be that there is some significant difference. Say if I took the scenario that one of the campuses had leadership and professional development that focused around the Hispanic community more than the other 2 campuses. My alternative hypothesis would be, one of those campuses that has more of a focus on Hispanic students with more professional development may and should have higher star algebra scores for those students. But for my null hypothesis, I'm just saying, I think they're all going to be the same. And I pulled my descriptive statistic. I like to see everything on one page. I know that as the data gets bigger, I'm not going to be able to do that, but for this particular study where I'm still learning, it's helpful for me. I went ahead and pulled up the star raw score conversion table, and I can see that my means for all 3 campuses were, the lowest I had was 29 and the highest was 32.83. So I'm just going to look over here, and you can see 29 is in the approaches, 32 is also in the approaches, almost to the meets, but not quite. So all of my scores, my mean scores for all 3 campuses, were right in this area, right in the approaches area for those Hispanic male high school students between the 3 campuses. The next thing I'm going to look at is my standard deviation for all 3 campuses, and you can see I have 12, 11, and almost 10, kind of an even spread that's going kind of in a downward from 1001 to 1007 campuses. My kurtosis and my skewness, my kurtosis is all negatives all the way across for all 3 campuses, and so is the skewness. A couple of things that I've researched about kurtosis is, for a normal distribution, a kurtosis of 3 would show a normal kind of what I call a bell curve. These are not 3, so there's some kind of plateau or spike. I'm thinking they're probably plateaus. I'm not sure at this level of my journey. The skewness, a normal distribution of 0 would be a skewness, and really when you think about it, these are very close to 0. So I'm kind of calling that these have similar skewness. It's skewed negatively, and they have almost a 0, so it's a normal distribution. The next thing I'm going to look at, as I said, I manipulated my student count in Campus 1007 just specifically so I could learn about the post hoc procedures. I didn't want to have just 2 campuses in my Annova. I wanted 3 so I could compare them and do the post hoc. So I have 112, 111, and then 112 on campus 1007, where I manipulated some of that data. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to run I ran my Annova single factor. You can see my 3 campuses, my student count, my averages, my variances. I can see some differences in my variances right here. Had a bigger variance on campus 1001 than I did on 1007, so I'm kind of thinking just at this point there may be some difference, significant difference in between my campuses. The next thing I'm going to look at is my F critical, which is 3.022927. And if I plotted that on my F chart here, this is where I think would probably be that F critical. Now I notice that my F is just slightly, it's 3.0927, and that's going to be slightly to the right. I'm going to go ahead and put that in here. And if I drew that in here, it's going to be just probably not, it's probably going to be a little bit closer than that, but just for this purpose. Because that F factor is to the right of my F critical, this area right in here would have been the null hypothesis. I'm going to fail to reject it. But because it's outside of that, from this Annova result, I'm going to actually reject the null hypothesis, because I do have an F factor that's outside of the fail to reject zone right in here. Because of that, I'm going to go ahead and do a post hoc test between my 3 campuses, and I've drawn my little table here. Let's make that a little prettier. And I've kind of made a little matrix to keep up with which ones I need to compare. I would never compare 1001 to itself, so there's going to be a null void there. I'm not even going to run that test. Right here, I'm going to do a 1001 to 1006, and then a 1001 to 1007. I've already done 1001 and 1006, so I won't need to do that again. I'm not going to run 1006 against itself, but I would compare 1006 to 1007, and I've already run 1001 and 1007, so I would not have a value there. And so really, I'm going to run 3 t-tests to determine which campuses are really the most significantly different from each other as far as those test scores. And here are my t-test results. And you can see that my t-critical value was 1.97075,627 on each of my t-criticals. And here are my campuses that basically are within this matrices. These are the outcomes of those t-tests. And on the t-test, I'm looking for a p-value that's less than, that's most significantly less than my t-critical value. I can see up here in my matrices, I have 0.01881, 0.30537, and 0.12908. The most significant of those is this one right here, the 1001 to 1006. That one is the least of those, so it's the most different from my t-critical value, and that's the one in which I would focus on the significant differences in those test scores. That's the one I would do a further research on those campuses. it could be that my alternate hypothesis of one of the campuses because they have a higher Hispanic immersion and professional development of staff members for community involvement, student participation, that is actually working to help improve those test scores. And so I would go back in accepting my alternate hypothesis and rejecting the null, and I would go back in and do further research on campus 1001 and 1006 to really pull out the significant differences between those two campuses. And that's it.